For all the stories of what a success the NRL was in Las Vegas, the US TV ratings painted a far different picture. Sure, the stadiums were pretty full up and the games were solid spectacles, but the nitty-gritty details still matter. It cost a whole lot of money to organise these games, and the return on investment is far from guaranteed. It coincidentally was completed a week before our AFL season started, and clearly, with a bit of a vacuum of space left in New South Wales and Queensland, the AFL decided to open the season with a brand new opening round in the two states. Clearly the codes are going in different marketing directions, and it's only hyped up the battle for the country's biggest between the AFL and NRL. Focusing back to the NRL and their ambitious goal to conquer the US, Peter V'landys, the chairman of the Australian Rugby League Commission, said himself, "The success will be how many people watch it on Fox 1. Fox 1 goes out to over 100 million viewers in the USA. We want to have a game on Fox 1 every week for the next 6 months, and that will be a success." The first of the two NRL games was scheduled at 9:30 PM Eastern Time, but was delayed on Fox Sports 1 because the college basketball game preceding the NRL ran too long. This obviously didn't help and led to a massive viewership of just 61,000 average audience per minute. That Rabbitohs Sea Eagle game peaked at just 79,000 viewers. The next game between the Roosters and Broncos fell further off with an average audience of just 44,000. The Australian viewership was high and did get a boost from the promotion, but that big US audience full of millions of sport-crazed fans that V'landys and the NRL want didn't really watch. Now, I'm not a marketing expert, but I know American sport well. I think I have a quick message for the NRL and the AFL. America will never ever care about Australian sport. It's a huge waste of money and time. You can't infiltrate a market that is already full. The NBA, MLB and NHL are already deep in American bloodlines, and the real hurdle, which these sports can barely touch, is the NFL. You know what the AFL and NRL means to Australians? Well, copy and paste that feeling, and that's the NFL. That's why the AFL is strategically outdoing the NRL when it comes to expansion. The opening round had a pretty mixed response when it was announced. Regardless of what you think of it, it shows the ambition of the AFL and new CEO Andrew Dillon. Forget overseas markets, it's all about New South Wales and Queensland. So what better way to get attention than opening the season in the less traditional AFL states? Now, at the time of making this video, the TV ratings are only out for the Thursday night game. It averaged 702,000 viewers with a peak of 977,000. Overall, that average was up 10% compared to games last season. It's solid enough, and the 40,000 people at the SCG was a great crowd. 33,000 people were at the Gabba, 22,000 watched the Suns and Tigers, while the final game saw a 21,000 strong crowd for GWS and Collingwood. Overall, the AFL will be happy with the results. It does help having big Victorian clubs come to play, and the next step, in which Andrew Dillon knows, is to fill the Gold Coast and GWS stadiums when clubs outside the Collingwoods, Richmonds and etc. come to visit. In February, Dillon further pledged to invest $1 billion of funding to grow AFL across all of Australia. Now, the exact details of this are not fleshed out, but the messaging is important. While the NRL is looking to become international and play under the big bright lights of Las Vegas, the AFL is looking inwards, specifically the fast-growing populations of Sydney's outer suburbs. Pair this with the licence handed to Tasmania that will hopefully go through, and it's clear which of the competitions is national and which one is pretending to be. The raw numbers back the AFL in this debate, which is mainly brought up by the NRL. Hunter Fujak, lecturer at Deakin University and author of the 2021 book Code Wars, said under Australian Rugby League Commission Chair Peter V'landys, the sport had played into the rivalry in recent years. The AFL tends not to give it as much oxygen, and that's probably a reflection of where things are at that the NRL needs to whip up the Code Wars style discussion, read an article by The Guardian. Australian rules football is roughly played by 550,000 people, while rugby league sits at around 180,000. Attendance isn't even close. AFL matches are on average attended by 36,000 people, while the NRL is a bit below 20,000, according to TV Black Box's Jason Lassie. A 2021 report saw the AFL exceed 1 million total AFL all-club memberships, while the NRL was a bit above 300,000. And finally, where the NRL is comparable are the TV ratings. Home and away season games sit at similar average levels, but in 2023, the AFL Grand Final had 3.4 million average viewers, while the NRL sat at around 2.9 million. So really, there isn't much of a debate here. The AFL is the biggest, covers far more of the country, and is looking to expand where it matters, in Australia, not the US. Throughout its evolution from the VFL to the AFL, America has had its fair share of Australian rules football. There have been a variety of exhibition matches going back to 1963 in Honolulu and San Francisco, where Geelong played Melbourne. Crowds were terrible, and without much publicity, the venture never really got going. Multiple proposals between the then VFL and ESPN caught some traction during the 80s, but again, nothing ever came out of this. In 1988, 89 and 90, 3 AFL games were played in Miami and Portland. The 1990 crowd peaked over 14,000 people, but fell short of hopeful expectations, and since then, only one game in 2006 has been played with AFL clubs on US soil. However, the AFL has something the NRL doesn't. Mason Cox, an American straight out of Texas, 7 feet tall and playing for the biggest club. His presence alone and his raft of outstanding performances in big games has caught some attention. He's had regular appearances on the Pat McAfee Show, helped inspire late night host Conan O'Brien, travelled to Sydney and film a bit with the Swans, and in 2023 appeared in a big 60 Minutes interview. The AFL in 2020 signed a deal with ESPN to broadcast 2 games per week, a sign that the sport is at least growing a little in the US. A multi-season major deal with an American network is still yet to be signed, but Mason Cox deserves some credit for at least spreading the word in the United States. Overall, the history of the AFL pretty much rules out any possible expansion abroad. The China Games failed, and I think Andrew Dillon and his team are doing the right thing focusing marketing resources here. But hey, maybe the NRL is onto something. Maybe their sport is so great that it can be competitive with the NFL, MLB, and NBA, or it could be some kind of weird ploy to show up the AFL in flashy Las Vegas for the next few years. In 2024, the data still points towards Australian rules football as the biggest sport in the country.